This is the Korg DS-10, a synthesizer and drum machine for a Nintendo. You get two analog synthesizers with routing and editing options, a 4-voice drum machine using the same synthesis engine, step sequencers for each part, an effects processor, and a 6-channel mixer. You know, I've never particularly cared for music programs for game devices. Normally they're dumbed down without any serious editing tools, or they require no creative input. They're simply a game that triggers preset phrases. Or, in the case of Nanoloop, they have good sound options, but they're wrapped in a bizarre interface. The DS-10 is the first one that feels like a genuine instrument to me rather than a game. It feels designed by electronic musicians rather than gamers. After turning it on, you load a song. There are 21 total slots and each song contains 16 patterns. You can also save synthesizer and drum sounds independently, allowing you to load them between songs. Not very exciting, but that's the initialized patch you start with. You edit synth parameters and sequencers by selecting the page, or you can use the arrow keys. Here are the initial drum sounds. You get 4 per song. This is the step sequencer. I'll throw some hi-hats down. Add a couple snares. You can control the gate, volume, and pan of each step. I'll change the hi-hats. The sequencers for the instruments are similar, but they have a piano roll, allowing you to select notes. I'll drop the tempo down to 100. I'm going to fix that crappy synth sound. You can add delay, chorus, or flanger to any of the parts separately or to all of them. There's also an XY control pad similar to Korg's Chaos, with which you can record changes to the filter and resonance or volume and panning. You can also input notes this way with selectable scales and root nodes. But it's hard to control and not useful to me. But if you change the scale to octaves, it's kind of like an arpeggiator. For modulation, there's a virtual patch screen. Here I'm drawing a cable between a triangle LFO to pitch for vibrato. Here's a slower LFO routed to oscillator 2, and if I turn hard sync on, I get a pretty reasonable sound. Drums are edited in the same way, but the sound generation isn't real time. Essentially, you create a sound, it samples it to memory, and it makes sense because there's no way that they could have had 6 real-time synth engines on a DS, but it means that while each pattern can have different settings within the same song for the synthesizers, for the 2 monosynths, you only get 4 drum sounds for all 16 patterns. They're locked for editing once you're actually playing patterns or songs. I'm going to edit the kick. Now it's sampled and locked down. I'll speed through the snare and hi-hat editing. Now that's just 2 examples of sounds. There are thousands that you could create, particularly because the DS supports FM and AM routing with oscillator 2 as a source. This can create very metallic sounds. So far I've been showing 1-bar patterns, and now I want to make a song. I can copy patterns over, change the notes, and then in the song window, select which of the 16 patterns is playing for each measure. There you go. That's the Korg DS stripped down to the bone. The synth engine sounds way better than you'd expect. It's a bit light on bass frequencies, but just a 3 decibel increase at around 100 Hz, and suddenly it sounds good. I like how you can create the drum sounds rather than use pre-sampled sounds. The LFOs can be clocked to tempo, you have great routing options, it really feels like a musical instrument. The bad stuff is that you can't edit sounds in song mode, and you can't record notes beyond one pattern. So if you have a 4-bar melody, you have to break it between 4 patterns, rather than continuously record each note. I think that they could have done a couple of other things as well. It would have been nice to have real-time control, like a button for modulation, or use the side bumpers for pitch bend. Since the drums aren't real-time, they could have expanded their sound options, like an additional envelope. It would have been nice to be able to automate volume and channel muting in song mode. Often the only difference between one pattern and another is that you're just adding a part. These suggestions wouldn't need a lot of memory or CPU cycles, but it might be that Korg is already pushing this little thing to its limit. This might be it, and I'm just being greedy. For the price of having some pizza and enough beer to throw that pizza up, you can buy a synthesizer. Instead of playing Mario Kart, you can write music. So if you already have a Nintendo DS, it's done, it's over. Go get it, it's that simple. If you don't have a DS, it's a little more complicated because you'd be looking at around $180 instead of $60. But there's nothing out there that compares. You could get a used laptop, which actually has more power for $200 or so, but it's not nearly as portable. You could get a Yamaha QI synthesizer, but those have like general MIDI sounds and they don't have deep synthesis or touchscreen editing. So when you actually get it, the manual will be in Japanese unless they release this for, well, what is this? For sale and use in Japan only. Oh shit. Huh. Well, I guess there might be somewhere that you can get these.